everybody. So today is Wednesday, tomorrow is a holiday. I'm gonna have a little family barbecue to celebrate my grandpa's birthday, which was on the 15th, which is also a holiday. And also my aunt, she's not here. I think she has a house in Florida, so she's there. But I think her birthday was on the 17th, and my birthday is Friday. So I think it's always going to be a celebration of my birthday. It's kind of like the beginning. Last year, I ended up having like, it was kind of like my birth month. I ended up indulging myself in a lot of like the things, and some of that behavior ended up continuing towards like throughout like the next year, which is it's this year. But I think that my life was overall better because of it. Like I've been thinking about this, and I had like my indulgences, and like they were kind of like one of the things that made me realize that like life is worth living, that I have like these little delights every day, and like that is something. And naturally, like I also learned balance this year, because it was a little excessive in November and December, because to me it was like adjacent to my birthday. But I think right now I kind of like I'm striking a good balance between me kind of like having my little indulgences but not going overboard with my budget, or what I can healthfully consume, because a lot of my indulgences are food, and it's not just like any food. It's usually stuff that isn't particularly healthy. And I'm gonna be 28 Friday, so I'm getting closer to 30, and that is a whole thing. It's I don't know if I under 30, things are going to change, which is why I've been trying to change some of my habits, right now, so that it isn't so much of a struggle in a few years from now. But I'm already kind of like struggling. I definitely feel like, these days for me is harder for me to lose weight than it used to be, which is kind of like what is going to, seems it's only going to get worse from here. So, I think that this particular journey that I am right now with my way of trying to lose weight, that one, is going to be a good test. To see if like I can make things work out, because first I went to my psychiatrist today. I had an appointment. It was just a checkup, yeah, but also I found out that through the medications I'm taking, I take 4 medications in total, plus birth control, which I take for my PMS, and one of them like I get at my local health center, and the other 3 I was having to buy, but I found out that 2 of them I can get at a state pharmacy, which I was taking the other medication. Another medication I was taking before, but like I stopped using it. But realize now that I can do it. So like he has to file in some forms, and give me like a prescription. And my mom and I were probably thinking about going there today, because usually it takes like 30 days for things to be processed, and we kind of like wanted to like the earlier we get this, the better, so I can get this medication. And I would say like this really changed my perspective regarding like the new medications I've been taking, because before, like a lot that I was taking, I was getting for free through like our health care system, and then like it ended up changing, and then I couldn't get it, which means I was spending more money on medication, which is very important. So like that is one of the priorities that I have. But it just ended up changing my budget because of that. So like now that I see that this medication I can get for free, I'm really excited about this. And I'm like, what, like that's good. It's okay for me to be taking the medication, because in general, like I've been doing pretty well. So the medication has been working wonders actually. So I was kind of, but I was kind of like hesitant, because it was like, this is changing the landscape of my expenses, and I don't make that much. So, like every cent counts. So yeah, I'm really happy about this development. I think that this is giving me more confidence in this treatment, and like I just hope that we're going to keep this up. I'll keep this up, like this good pace, and of me being able to do things. Like as I mentioned before, I have this barbecue tomorrow, and then after that I'm going to have a like a game session with some friends. I would have one Friday, but I don't know if that one's happening anymore, which it's okay, because maybe I can have dinner by myself, because at Outback Steakhouse I got a coupon for free dessert if I buy something. So I'm kind of thinking about that. Maybe I could go for dinner, and it would be fun. And the way that I'm going to properly celebrate my birthday is on the 23rd, which is Sunday. I'm going to a all-you-can-eat sushi buffet with my brother and my parents. My parents don't eat sushi, so I don't know what. So, but the thing is, it's about like being together. And we went there this year for my brother's birthday in January, and I historically have been going a lot to Outback Steakhouse for my birthday. I think the free dessert really kind of like strikes a chord with me. and I like that. Like, it's one of my happy places. You know, I'm usually not a huge fan of meat. You know, like house meat, pork. You know, not really my thing. But you know, the way that they make it there, like I like it. You know, so it's exciting. You know, for me to just enjoy this, because you know it's also, I think, because you know eat a lot of meat, sometimes I'm lacking protein. There are other ways to make up for it, but I don't know. I don't think I'm always doing well in terms of that. But yeah, so I'm going to have and then Friday morning we're going to go to the this it's not really a store, it's kind of like this warehouse where you buy stuff in bulk and then it's cheaper. I don't know what you call that in English, but we're going to go there because my mom's church, they have this project every Christmas where they get a bunch of how are you reading? Where they get sorry, I'm back. But they basically have like the shoe boxes where like each person can kind of like there's some school supplies, some toys, some snacks, some stuff just to give children for Christmas, like the ones that can afford something or they don't really have the resources there, which is really nice. I think it's a really nice thing to do, and they do this every year. But basically you have the option of like you kind of like assemble your own box, or you give the money, and then like the church, like like the non-profit that is associated with the church, like they assemble it and all that. So like a friend of ours who works at this non-profit, she's kind of like responsible for this, so she has to go there to buy things because it's usually cheaper when you buy them in bulk. It's not really like it's not selling food or like house-wise. It's just I mean, there's a bit of everything. There's like decorations, there's school supplies, there's toys, there is like general objects that you have around your house. So yeah, so we're going there, Friday morning, and like there's a McDonald's like nearby. So I'm like, maybe I'm gonna treat myself just a McDonald's, like on my birthday, and that'd be nice. And then maybe in the afternoon I can go to Outback Steakhouse, so that's nice. So there's something that I'm gonna do on the Monday of the 22nd, but then in the afternoon my friend, same that invited me for the game nights, like she's going to be, I don't know what you call it, because like it is not at night, so it's just a game afternoon, and so I'm thinking about going. And then there is the 23rd, which is like when I'm going out celebrating, and then the 26th there is the this like this end of the year celebration that we're going to go together for my Zumba class. So I'm going there. But anyways, my point is that I'm kind of like really engaged in a lot of like different social interactions, and this is new for me. I haven't really been like this for like a decade and a half probably. So I'm excited about like these things, which is interesting because sometimes I think I would look at myself and be like, there are not enough opportunities for me to interact, for me to engage. But like the opportunities, they were out there, like you just have to engage with them. But I think that I was on autopilot in terms of like just denying this interactions that for so long. And right now I'm kind of like deconstructing like this narrative that I kind of like placed in my head. And it's fun because like every like little event, it might not be but might not seem to be super exciting, but I enjoy going out there and doing my own thing. And December, like it seems that we're going to have more fun. It's going to be the end of the year, so like there are going to be some events. And honestly, I have so many things to do that there are some events that I'm having to turn down, having to choose which one I can. So it's like, okay, me, social butterfly. So that's new. It was already 8 minutes of this video. I hadn't even like started talking about what I wanted to talk about, which is resilience. So something that I have been observing in myself is that I've been more resilient lately, and it doesn't seem to be a fluke. It just seems that I have been able to process some things that I hadn't processed before, and as a consequence I kind of like things, they're kind of like not taking as much of a toll on me. And this is kind of like all I've ever wanted. I wanted to be unbothered, although I will say that at certain points in my life, the unbothered I wanted to be was unhealthy. It was just me suppressing feelings, which is not ideal. So like right now, I'm not suppressing anything. I'm just being myself and embracing, who I am, and embracing my life and the things that are, the things that aren't, everything that is right, everything that is wrong with the world. And like those things are not really making me, falter, which is, like, as I said, it feels like something a long way coming, something that I've always wanted, because the alternative is just, like me suffering. And I don't want to suffer, first of all, but like when I just see suffering and nothing else, like that makes me less, likely to, enjoy my life and to want to continue to live. So it is good that I'm making progress this way, and I'm not trying to, because there's always a part of me that's tempted to say, like fucking finally, this is a long way coming, and like it should have happened years ago. But I'm trying not to listen to that part of me, because that is part of it. I think that in a certain way it's always going to be there, but it's not so much about extinguishing that part anymore, but about making sure that it doesn't fully thwart warp anything, doesn't make me look at the world like that. It's okay for me to have self-doubt. It's okay for me to have, questions, for me to just be a little frustrated. But I will say, I think that the level of frustration has also decreased. I think that is, something that is happening, positively in my life. That, like the nagging voice in the back of my head is getting not only weaker, but also like there's like less things for it to nag me about. So because I'm kind of like more accepting of myself, and the whole thing of like radical acceptance, that is changing the game for me. Like that is really making a difference. And so I'm really happy where I am mentally, which is kind of like what I want. I've always wanted this, but I think that I've been so discouraged this past few years that I've kind of accepted that inherently I'm going to change. I'm gonna have an episode, and it is. And maybe it is the case. Maybe I'm gonna have an episode, but like the important thing is, as I said, resilience. You have to endure. Naturally, like I'm going through depressive episodes, it's going to be hard for me to do things. But I think that there are ways that I can kind of like manage, particularly right now that I think I'm so attuned to myself that I can tell when things are shifting. So if I'm sensing a depressive episode in the horizon, like I contact my doctor right away. We adjust the medication. We do what we can. I go to therapy. We try to work through things, and as a consequence, the episode may still kind of like happen, but the consequences are not going to be as bad. And the same thing with like a manic episode. Although I will say that sometimes it's not that I'm tempted to get a manic episode. Not that I can predict. I can predict these things. I can't incite it necessarily. There are things you can consume that will, but I'm kind of like far away from those things. So it's not going to happen. I'm pretty confident of that. Not that I won't have an episode, but like that I won't do anything to incite it. Naturally, things happen, in life, and like that those happenstances, they're not within your control, and that's okay. As I said, like you can only control the factors and the elements that they're within your power. So it's frustrating that some things happening that may really fuck you up, but I think when it happens, instead of like looking back and crying over spilled milk, you should like try to see what can I do right now to make sure that I don't go back to a certain mindset that is very damaging and very it's very damaging. It can have very permanent consequences. But yeah, so resilience. So I've been observing that I seem to be a little bit more resilient these days, which is all that I wanted, as I already mentioned. And but like it shows up. Okay, there's many examples of like me being more resilient, and I think that the first ones that come to mind are the more drastic ones. Like the things that usually get me on a spiral. And so like regarding that, like the things that are happening in the world, like all the bad things, they still like affect me, but like not to the point that I want to give up. Like I think that I am, because sometimes I was also thinking about changing the subject slightly. It's like, because I always say that I've been a pessimist, but there were some ways in which you could argue that maybe I was an optimist, or I don't know if that is whether it's that, or if it's just like I'm trying to look at situations from like different perspectives. Because I observed this, when we were coming back, my parents and I come for my consultation, because basically what happened is that I just saw, like a person, I don't remember exactly, there was this woman, and she had 2 cards or something, and my parents were like, okay, one of them is not hers or whatever, and I was like, what if like they both are? Which I know sounds like basically like nothing, but it did get me thinking, like, okay, so like if I had this outlook for people, it makes them a bit of an optimist, right? Because I'm looking at the glass half full. So I'm kind of like realizing that there was a dichotomy within my system for so long, because on one hand I am out out here just, like thinking that nothing's going to work out and that things are going to get worse and then there's nothing we can do. But on the other hand, I'm looking at individuals and situations specifically, and I'm kind of like trying to, have some empathy for them, have some, like have like an understanding. So yeah, the dichotomy of human beings, and I don't think necessarily one negates the other, because it's different things, as I said. One thing for you to look at an individual and have a conclusion. It's a different thing for you to just look at the entirety of a group of people, or like an organization or an ideology or whatever. Like there are differences, and so I think it's different, for me to just be pessimistic about one and not necessarily about the other, which is just kind of like a lesson for life in general. If you're just looking at the big picture, too much, it may feel overwhelming. So like maybe focus on like certain spots, instead of like trying to have like look at the entirety of it, because sometimes like you can benefit from like looking at the big picture, and sometimes I think you have to be more localized with like your attention, so that things, they seem to be more doable. Because ultimately there's that, like even if something cannot be done, I think that your attitude about it is very significant, because if you think that, because if you think that things can be solved, that there is a solution to problems, it might make you have more ideas and make you try more things. And yes, like if you try something and it doesn't work out, it can be discouraging at the very least, just like but also I don't be open to possibilities. And I think that maybe that's what I want this glass half full outlook on a lot of different things in my life. And I think that maybe that is pretty much the key to resilience, because I'm trying to find solutions instead of like just being like there's nothing that can be done. I'm like putting myself out there, and that maybe, as I said, like sometimes your solutions, they're not going to work out. It's not going to things, maybe they're not going to be okay, and that's okay. It's not okay as in like it's it's not good, but that is just the cards you're dealt, sometimes. And there's nothing inherently wrong with being discouraged by that reality, but I do think that you have to keep going. You have to get up, if you fall, and that is easier said than done, obviously. But it is something to consider, that maybe like the solution you're coming to, like it's not going to be, maybe like the possibility you're coming up with, like that's not going to be the solution, but it's still important for you to think about things and for you to want to move on. Like you try this thing, it doesn't work out, sometimes you have to take a moment for yourself to kind of like recollect, and like that is also and that's kind of like part of the process. I think it's important when you're thinking about the future, for you to kind of like for you to foresee some leeway, some like little gaps in time, because sometimes like you try everything and like things are not working out, so you're kind of stuck. And like if you kind of like keep trying to think about things, you kind of like you're stuck on this loop and you're not making any progress. So it's good for you to just take a breather and just step away from it like a little bit, and to figure out what to do next. And basically I'm not saying that like every problem has a solution, because that's not true. Sometimes like there is a solution, but it is not within your means. The solution exists, yeah, but like it's not, so it's like it's not really a solution if it's not within your means. So I'm not trying to say that there's always going to be a solution, because people have like so many different problems, and I don't want to be the person being like, okay, you can figure it out, because sometimes I don't know what they're going through. I don't know like the pain and the suffering that comes from like whatever it is that they're going through, and I don't want to be the person who like pretends to understand. I mean, I can be understanding, but I don't necessarily understand the situation, and so I don't want to give people false hope, basically. But I do think that there, to a certain degree, having such a mindset can be very healthy and very helpful, even if it's just for you. But yeah, so I have been thinking about this for a while, the part of like resilience, and how like I think that at different moments where I was struggling, I was going through these depressive episodes, mainly the depressive episodes. I had no perspective, I had no will, I had no volition, and that was very counterproductive. And honestly, in those times, I don't think there's anything else I could have done. I had to wait for like medication to work out, and for like my other habits, such as exercising, eating healthy, going to therapy, having have, like other interests and hobbies and things that can kind of like ground you, socialize. All those things are important. And naturally, like when you're depressed, it's hard for you to just engage for everything. But like I think depending on the degree or the level they are, like there is a little of something that you can do, and like doing a little something per day may not seem like a lot, but it kind of like it ends up adding up. So for example, like writing is a good example. So even if I'm not able to just write as freely as I want and as much as I want at certain points, like it's important for me to write something, even if it's just a sentence, so you can kind of like create this habit. But also it's kind of like you pushing through things. Naturally, as I said, like there are situations in which there's nothing that can be done, like you're kind of stuck. But if there is something that you can do, then you should try to do it, even if you fail. Like I think sometimes trying is enough to keep you grounded, to keep you like anchored, in this life. Because you need things to look forward to. And as I've already given plenty of examples of some of the things I've been looking forward to recently, and so none of them are like super, because I have all these megalomaniac fantasies, like I have all these desires, all these dreams, although lately things have been pretty chill. So sometimes in my head I was like, I need something stupendous, something huge for me to just want to continue living. Naturally, that has also to do with the fact that I was probably going through a pretty bad depressive episode, where like I need something extraordinary to kind of like keep me out. But as I said, so like not extraordinary, but still, like these are things that they're all feasible, they're all part of my life, and I'm glad that I'm having these opportunities, and I hope that by kind of like allowing these opportunities, I end up having more. I mentioned the neurodivergent group of people that we have like meetings every once in a while. I haven't really been to a meeting yet. I mean, I'm only knowing about the group for like a week or something, and they're gonna have a meeting this Saturday, but I already have another thing to do, another situation that I'm gonna get you. And so yeah, pretty much what I meant when I said like, I'm happy to start now things. But I do intend at some point to go to these meetings, and here's going to be open like another like another sea of opportunities and of possibilities, because this particular group, I got to know about it because I went to certain events. So this event led to a different event, and that's kind of like what I want. I've been wanting to socialize more, as I mentioned before, and I think it is important for you to just put yourself out there. And I think a lot of times we think that there's like no opportunities, but like they are. We're just not, like taking. Because sometimes I think we want a very specific catered thing. Just I want this specific scenario, and sometimes like it's not going to come just like that. You have to go to the things that you can go, and then it leads to you, getting there. And sometimes it's not just going to be a one-off process. It's not going to be this one and then this to get to this one. There's going to be multiple sometimes, but like the important thing is like, so I guess like aiming for the future for something is cool. Particularly something that I wanted for a long time, but you also have to enjoy this little helps that you have at every level. So yeah. So anyways, resilience. I think I've been finding myself to be more resilient these days than I used to be, and this is great news for me right now because I'm happier and more contented and less unhappy. And less frustrated, by things, but also in the long run, because I do think that this new outlook that I have is going to impact the way that I, like the way I interact with my episodes in the future. I think that things are going to, even if they're bad, they're not going to be as bad, even if like slightly, like they're slightly better. So maybe like the depths of despair I'm going to sink into, they're not going to be as great. So that is a possibility, and I'm not looking forward to having an episode, but if I do have one in the future, right now it's the first time that I'm like, maybe I'm not going to have an episode forever, more, and I know it's unrealistic to think that way, but like things seem to be flowing okay, and everything seems to be, I seem to be doing fine, and things are working out, in my life. Like I'm having my anchors, I'm putting myself out there more, and I'm kind of like, like trying to make sure that, the anchors that I have, they're meaningful enough, there's enough connection that they can, truly anchor me. Because as I mentioned before, writing is so important to me, it's something I enjoy doing so much, it's such a part of who I am, and yet sometimes when I'm depressed, I can't write anything. It's me back. My dad's going, came to tell me goodbye. But basically what I was trying to say is that even if things are, because I feel like you have to celebrate your victories, you have to really, enjoy that moment, because even if it's just like a slight change, like sometimes that is huge. Some of these changes takes like so many months and or sometimes years for you to get to it. So you have to acknowledge them, and I don't think they're being overtly optimistic by acknowledging, like these moments that happen, because they are, you want big victories, I know, but small ones, they end up adding up as well. So you're kind of like looking at different situations. Like I think, yes, I should celebrate things, celebrate your victories even if they're small, because like this kind of like stimulates your brain, I think, to kind of like try to have even more of those situations, and the more victories there are, because sometimes for you to get to a certain milestone, like there's a lot of smaller things that have to happen for you to get there. So there's that. But it don't have to diminish like those small victories, because I don't know, I think that bringing that level of optimism to your life, it kind of just stimulates more victories to come, because you're more motivated, and more you believe more that things can change, that things that there's a solution to things. And so yes, the power of, I guess, like optimism, I don't know if like that's the right word, but I don't know, I kind of like, I want to be a glass half full type of person. I think historically I've been a glass half empty in a lot of different ways, although there are some situations where I was delusional basically. So in a certain way, I guess it was kind of like radical optimism, those situations. But basically, yeah, so that's that. I think I'm more resilient, and this is translating into a lot of different improvements, a lot of like different changes in my life. And I think the tendency is for me to get even better, even more resilient, and which is kind of like ideal, because I used to have like because of trauma, like so many triggers, so many things that were kind of like the sensitive topics for me, and I'm so done with that. I don't want to have, you're always going to have vulnerabilities, you're always going to be vulnerable, but I don't want those vulnerabilities. I want something else. I'm tired of that. Like that, they had been a part of my life. This was some of them, like 13 or younger. So I'm over it. Like I want something else. I want challenges, yes, but I want challenges that are fresh. I'm kind of like, I don't want to have more of the same. And I know that it's going to be a process. Even though I'm processing things great right now, there's still like some remnants of the past that I'll have to address. But I'm ready. I'm ready to. It's not that I want right now more than I used to be able to overcome these things, but I think that I've done enough growth. I've matured a lot. As I said, I'm getting close to my 30s, so that is an interesting situation to have. But yeah, so basically I'm trying to do better. I think that is, I don't know if I said this directly, but I do think that everything I said has implied that I'm trying to do better, and I think that I'm succeeding in that. I'm doing better, and I'm making changes that impact not only like myself right now, but myself in the future. So life is good basically. My plans for today are writing. I have to go to the state pharmacy to get my medication not to get my medication, but to get the forms, and like the thing for me to get medications for free. And I have therapies at the health center, so I'm going to go to the health center, then I'm going to go to therapy, then I'm going to go to state pharmacy, and then I'm going to go to my Zumba class, and then like I don't know if we have anything to do in the afternoon after that, but by the end of that, like it's always going to be the time for me to go to bed. So I want to so I mentioned that Monday I was kind of struggling a little bit with writing. I had a lot of free time. I didn't manage to make much progress, but yesterday I ended up making about the same progress, and I had like a third of the time, or maybe even less. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I want today to be better, and it's okay if because I mentioned like the strategy that I wanted to have, which was like me locking myself in one chapter and trying to conclude it, and I don't know if it worked out so well. So I'm just gonna focus on like regular progress. It's okay for me to just go through the chapters and add a little bit to every one, because basically like you're just adding a little bit, but this little bit like adds up. If you go through it enough times, you end up concluding what you're looking for. So anyways, bye.